is hamstring week. So today's LYT class is called Cultivate the Coil. It's going to be all about hamstrings, and that doesn't just mean stretching, but it means strengthening and stretching. So our hamstrings are actually 3 muscles, and they attach to our sit bones, so the bottom of the pelvis, which is why people get what they call yoga butt, or that hamstring tendonitis, tendinopathy, where they're continually pulling at their hamstrings because they're overstretching. And it also has to do with the position of the pelvis. And guess what? We want it to be neutral for the hamstring sake too. It all makes sense. Okay, so hamstrings today, let's get going. We are going to use at least 1 block. If you have 2, that's fantastic. If you don't, that's okay too. So we're going to start on our backs, and let's grab 1 block and place it between your knees or your thighs. So we'll come into our bridge pose, finding that triple S. Bring your hands to your front ribs, and let's take a couple breaths here. Inhale and really feel that side to side expansion in the rib cage. Work on emptying the breath all the way out. Inhaling and feeling that side to side expansion. Exhale all the way out. Let's keep the hands on the ribs. Try to hold the end of that exhale as you push down into the feet, hug the block, lift just a few inches into your low bridge pose. So in bridge, this is a little extension of the hips. We want the glutes and the hamstrings working, but if you really tend to cramp up in the hamstrings, you're really going to think more glutes by tapping on them. But if you're feeling pretty balanced in your glute and hamstring, we're going to add on. See if you can dig the heels down and lift the toes. So we're really pushing down into the heels. We might lift the hips a touch more with that, but we're still not lifting from the low back of the pelvis. It's really just going to fire up the back of the leg. Now, if this feels yucky on the knees at all, you just walk the feet as far away from the hips as you need. Then you might be able to get that lift of the toes, that dig down of the heels. Now, if you're not feeling enough fire in the back of the legs, keep the heels digging in, but now think about dragging your heels back towards your butt, and that should really start to get the hamstrings and the glutes very clear. And then lower the toes down. We're going to lower the rest of the way down and just pause here. You can keep the block where it is for now, and let's just stretch out that right wrist. Our hips are down. We're just taking a little pause here to stretch out that right wrist. Inhaling into the sides of the ribs. Exhaling. Switch hands, stretch out that left wrist. Let's keep the block where it is between knees or thighs. Interlace your hands behind the head. We want the elbows up toward the ceiling or in toward the forehead as much as possible. Inhale, feel that sideways expansion into the rib cage as you breathe. Exhale, feel those front ribs pull in toward the body as you lift just enough to get off the shoulder blades. Give that block a little hug between the thighs. Keep the low back long. Inhale to lower down. Exhale, feel the front ribs pull in. Hug the block. Feel the belly draw down. Back of the neck is long. Chin is toward the throat. Inhale to lower. Keep those elbows in tight. Exhale, lift. Ribs pull down. Belly pulls down as we hug the block. Let's extend the left leg straight as we keep hugging the block and flex the foot. Step that left foot down without arching the low back. Inhale to lower. Exhale, lift. Ribs pull in. Hugging on the block. Chin is slightly toward the throat. Right leg extends. Flex the foot. Pull the toes back toward the shin. Step it down. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift. Ribs pull in. Belly pulls down as we hug the block. Back of the neck stays long. Extend the left leg. Flex the foot. Now keep the foot flexed and let's bend the knee. So this is knee flexion and then straighten. Knee extension. Step it down. Inhale and lower. Exhale, lift. Ribs pull in. Hug the block. Back of the neck is long. Our right leg extends, flex the foot. Keep hugging the block. We rebend the knee flexion, extension, straighten, step it down, inhale and lower. Let's release the hands. We're gonna make our way to quadruped. If you have a block or a book or a pillow even works here, we're gonna take the block and try to put it between the hamstring, so the back of the thigh and the calf. So it's gonna go behind the knee, depending on the amount of knee flexion, that bend in the knee that feels comfortable. It might need to be lower or higher up toward the knee, but just adjust. And notice that by just trying to hold the block here, you might already be feeling those hamstrings. Our hamstrings are trying to hold the block behind the leg. Let's of course find triple S. Back of the neck is long, chest is soft, arms are strong. Let's hover that left knee up. It's got the block behind it. Now make sure we didn't just sink into that right hip. So right hip is staying super strong. Let's keep the knee a little bit low and try to pulse here. So usually we do this as glute pulses, really focusing on using the glute. We are definitely still using the glute here, but holding the block is really going to get those hamstrings working. Hold that pelvis still. Notice that the head is dropping. Lower that left knee down and let's switch. Grab the block or whatever you've got and put it behind the right knee. Make sure those knees are nice and tight, pretty close to the hands actually for our quadruped. We can keep that triple S or neutral spine. Right knee hovers, keep it pretty low. And let's start to pulse the glute. You can have the foot relaxed, pointed, flexed, whatever you'd like here. And let's really feel that right glute and right hamstring, but also that left outer hip working to stabilize. So we're really kind of getting into that whole hip and glute hamstring complex around the legs. And then release it down. Let's remove the block. We're going to take the block and put it between our feet for down dog. So probably the longest way or the widest way. And we'll just start in quadruped with the block between the feet. So it could be between the toes, between the ankles. Slide those knees in nice and tight for your quadruped. Give that block a little hug with the feet. And then lift the hips up. Keep the knees soft. Keep pressing the hands into the ground. Arms are active. And just have a little bit of that sensation of hugging your feet into the block. You might notice a little bit more activity up the legs. Good. Let's lower the knees. Get the block out of the way. You can untuck the toes and let's just take a little cat-cow here. You're welcome to be on your fists if you'd like. Getting some movement into the spine. From here, let's step to the front of the mat. We'll continue our reset with our sun salutation 1. We are going to have a block with us or something that you want to use. It could be a book. Make it light though. We don't want anything heavy. Soften the knees. Let's check that triple S. Arms reach forward and up. Shoulder blades lift way up. Hinge at the hips, long in the spine. So we want to not pull at those hamstring attachments. Bend the knees. Right foot steps back, lower the knee, top of the foot. Let's lift up. Find our 90-90, right glute firm, and let's roll one shoulder back at a time. Keep feeling those 2 pelvic points draw in, getting a nice stretch across the front of the right hip. Hands come down, quadruped. Tuck the toes, find that triple S. Exhale, hover the knees. Keep pressing the ground away as you lift the hips straight up, down dog. Try to bring your torso towards your thighs by lifting the hip creases straight up. On your next exhale, use your core to lower the knees back to quadruped quietly. Right foot steps forward. We untuck the left toes. We're in our 90-90 other side. Zipper that pubic bone up. Firm that left glute. Let's roll one shoulder back at a time. Mobilizing the shoulders, getting the upper back moving a little bit. Hands come forward or to your blocks. Left foot steps forward to meet the right. Bend knee forward fold. Push the ground away as you rise up. Shoulder blades lift. Soften the knees. Let's hinge forward. Now we don't want to feel any pulling up near the pelvis. Soften the knees. Left foot steps back, lower the knee, but not the toes. We're gonna grab our block or our book, whatever we've got, zipper that pubic bone up. Palm the block the widest or the longest way again. Lift up. And remember, we're not lifting all the way up overhead because most of us are gonna do that to get there. So keep the ribs in, maybe it's more diagonal. We're gonna squeeze the block between the palms and bend the elbows. Try to keep those elbows in as narrow as you can. And then extend and straighten. So flexion of the elbows, extension. So we're starting to get our back line muscles or our pulling muscles warmed up along with the hamstrings. Put the block aside, quadruped. Toes tuck, keep the knees in nice and tight, spine is long. Exhale, hover. Continue to lift up without sinking into the shoulders, so keep the arms active. Big breath in here, lifting the hip creases, breathing into the ribs. Exhale, use your core to lower quietly back to quadruped. Left foot steps forward, we keep the right toes tucked this time. Grab that block. Palm it between the hands. Right glute's got a little squeeze to it. Up to whatever amount without popping the ribs forward. Squeeze the block as you bend the elbows. And then keep that squeeze. So super active in the triceps, around the shoulder, keeping those ribs in. Keep zippering the pubic bone to the belly. So this is going to help with that coil or cultivate the coil of the hamstrings, is that back line of the body. Hands come forward to your blocks. Right foot steps forward to meet the left. Bent knee forward fold. Push the ground away, rise up. Active in the legs. Soften the knees, let's hinge without pulling at the hamstrings. We're going to step the right foot back, but we'll lower the right knee to a block. So the supportive 90-90 with that right knee on the block. Lifting up. Feel that neutral spine here. We've got this upward lift of the right knee and right thigh bone up into the right side of the pelvis. Let's bring hands to triple S. So skull and sacrum, lengthen the back of the neck. Without the knee moving forward, we're going to hinge at the hips. Torso comes toward the thighs. Go slowly. And then push the ground away. Lift back up. Hinge forward slowly. We're using this left hamstring to slow us down. So we're lengthening this front hamstring to slow us down and then pushing it away. We're really using the hamstring to get us back up. So as we work on this hip hinge, we're getting both of those actions of the hamstring, that lengthening and contracting. One more time, hinge it forward, slow it down, using the strength of the back of that left leg. This time we'll hinge forward. Maybe left hand comes to another block. We're going to lift the right knee off the block. Hands come to blocks, tilted crescent. You could, of course, be up higher and hovering off the blocks, but that is definitely a lot on that left hip. It's just our first sequence, so let's support ourselves where we can. Really push down into that whole left foot. Our right heel will ground down, warrior two. Take one block with you. The block will come onto your thigh between your forearms. So instead of having forearm to the thigh, we're going to have forearm to the block. That's going to help us get this upward lift. So warrior two, let's come to that warrior variation. Now we're kind of pushing our hand down into the block, feeling this lift up into the right side of the body, stretching, actively stretching that right side, push down into that right foot. Let's backstroke the right arm, take the block with you. We're going to turn to the back of the mat. Three-legged quadruped. Right leg back. We're going to do what we did in our reset. Take the block, put it between the knee and the hamstring. Glute pulses here. Keep it as low as you need. Make sure that left hip is staying really stable so we're not sinking out to that left side. Everything is holding equally strong. Lower the knee, remove the block. We're going to head to down dog, but let's grab the block and just have it ready at the back of the mat. So we're going to come into happy squat soon. So from our quadruped, tuck the toes, down dog. If it feels good, you can pedal the feet out here. So you can get a little bit more of that stretch or pull in the hamstring, but let's make sure we're doing it with the pelvis staying neutral. So we're not stretching by pulling, we're stretching by lengthening with that support of our neutral pelvis, a little tone in the core. Big, big, big bend in your knees. Hands walk back toward the feet. Load the heels all the way down. This is going to load the hamstrings more by really pushing down into the feet. As we rise up at the back of the mat, we're going to grab the block. It's going to come between the knees the widest way. So we're still facing the back of the mat. We've got the block wide between the knees. So have the feet as wide as you need to accommodate that. Not a squeeze, but just a little hug on the block. And let's slide the hands down, hinge at the hips. This is a wide-legged hip hinge. Keep the pelvis neutral. So think about not spilling the bowl forward, which would be arching or sticking the butt out or up too high, not tucking under. So nice and neutral, and then slide back up. Press into the full feet. So we're moving the hips back as the chest comes forward, but we're imagining that we could do this with a broom behind our back. So knees are most likely going to stay very bent all the way down so that we get that even pull on the hamstring and not by moving out of our own range. Okay, you can remove the block and just turn it forward, front of the mat. We're going to do that on the second side. So let's reach the arms up, soften the knees. Exhale, hinge long in the spine, just like we practiced. Left foot steps back, the knee will lower onto a block, lifting for that 90-90. Zipper up here, keep the ribs in, firm that left glute. Hands come to your triple F, skull and sacrum. Knee doesn't move forward, this is gonna come from the right hip. So we hinge at the right hip, we try to bring our torso toward that right thigh. Slow down using the back of that right leg, and then push the ground away with that right foot. Inhale, we're hinging, we're not rounding, but we're also not sticking the butt out. We're sitting the hip back, but that's different than tipping the pelvis forward. So we want to feel like we're staying within a range where our hamstring and the back of our leg feels strong. It's getting stretched, but we're doing it with that muscular activation, not stretching by pulling too hard. Hinge and hold this time. Keep that long spine. Really think about making contact with that whole right foot. We're gonna lift off the knee. So if you need to bring right hand to a block to do that, lift off, or sorry, left knee, lift off that left knee. Hands come to both blocks, tilted crescent. Torso still toward this right thigh without rounding or arching. So feel strong behind that right leg. Ground that left heel, warrior variation. Bring a block. It's going to come to the top of the thigh. Forearm rests on the block. Left arm comes up and over. So the block here helps us to not sink into the hamstrings, but to feel this upward lift into the left side, pushing down into the whole left foot. Let's backstroke the left arm. We're going to take the block with us, turn to the back of the mat, three-legged quadruped. We're going to do the block behind the left leg, this time behind that left knee. Slide those knees in nice and tight toward the hands. Find triple S. Pulse this left hamstring and glute. It's a little hip extension. These are teeny tiny. Try not to find the movement anywhere else. Just the left leg. The right hip's not moving. The shoulders aren't moving. Lower the knee down, remove the block, keep it toward the back of the mat for that happy squat. Tuck the toes, down dog. Lift up. You can pedal the feet out. You can lift and lower both heels. Knees can stay super bent. Let's feel this upward lift into the hip creases. Arms are active. Hands walk back to the feet for that happy squat. Load the heels, so feel your weight even into the heels and toes. Rise up, let's take the block. It's gonna go widest setting between the knees. Still facing the back of the mat. Let's give a little hug on the block. Slide the hands down. So we don't wanna be sitting back too far on the heels. That's not good for the hamstring attachment either. So keep the weight right over the center of the foot. and then push the ground away. So we're actively using those hamstrings to get us back up. So we lengthen those hamstrings all the way down, and then we're contracting those hamstrings to get us back up. So try that maybe one more time. Weight is right through the center of the foot. And then remove the block. Let's turn to the front of the mat. We'll do one sun salutation A. Soften the knees, arms reach up, lift those shoulder blades, hinge at the hips, weight center of the feet so we're not pulling on the hamstrings. Step back for a plank. Knees can immediately lower or you can hold the knees up. Feel triple lats here, back of the neck long. We'll all lower the knees, re-lift the throat, lower down, keeping the top of the shoulders lifted. Low cobra, zipper the pubic bone up, feel the strength in the back of the legs here. Tuck the toes, down dog, weight stays in the hands, feet walk in to shorten the stance. Keep lifting the ribs up, the armpits up, the hip creases. Think about staying long through the spine and the backs of the legs by really bending the knees as you walk the feet forward. Bent knee forward folds. Nice long spine, press the ground away. Rise up. Okay, we're gonna start our second sequence. We'll step the right foot back. Soften the knee. We're in a high lunge. Zipper that pubic bone up. Now this is gonna be different for everyone. Both knees are very bent. My pelvis is upright. It's very important that we're not arching the low back here. It's not gonna feel good in that right knee. So we wanna feel like we have this upward lift. We're not sinking down to the ground. You can add just a little bit of a pulse, and this pulse is coming from just pushing the ground away with our front foot, the left foot. So really as you push the ground away, you should feel the back of that left leg, maybe up into the left glute. So think less about your right knee doing this and think about pushing the ground away with that left foot. It might not straighten very much at all. That's okay. We're activating those muscles at the back of the leg regardless of how big the movement looks. Now let's pause, hinge forward, feel your weight shift into that left foot. You can stay in a tilted crescent here. You can float the right toes up, go for length, not height. So nothing changes in the pelvis, nothing changes in the spine. We're really loading our left hip glute hamstring now. You can add a tap on your way or go straight to flexing this right hip. Pause here, zipper that pubic bone up. Now step your right foot back, turn to your right. We're facing the side of the mat. You can call this a butt kick. We're just gonna flex at the knee, so you're gonna try to kick your heel towards your butt, but don't let that be the goal. I just want you to think about what would you need to do to kick your butt? It's flexing your knee. But we're not going for kicking our butt because that's probably gonna take us into a lot of stuff we don't wanna do. So keep your pelvis neutral, any amount. You're gonna lift that heel up toward the back of your leg. But just like we practice in other positions, don't get the movement from somewhere else. Just think about it. If you're feeling your hamstrings, that's good. This is a hamstring curl. The hamstring helps to flex the knee. Okay, turn to the front of the mat. Quadruped. We're gonna do block between the thighs now. Whatever width feels good, narrow, medium way, knees in nice and snug for quadruped. Let's tuck the toes. Exhale, hover. Give that block a little hug. And then continue hugging as you lift up toward down dog. Keeping that hug of the block, that lift up of the hip creases. Take a breath in here. Exhale, quietly use the core to lower the knees. You can keep that hover or you can tap the knees all the way down. Your choice. Inhale. Exhale, return to hovering or just stay hovering if you stay there. Continue to lift up, hugging the block, pressing the ground away. Lift that block up toward the ceiling. Soften the knees or very much bend them as we walk the hands back, happy squat. Try to keep that block there. Weight is right over the center of the foot. Add a little pulse here. So just like we did in our lunge, don't think about the knees bending and straightening. Think about pushing the ground away with your feet, keeping that neutral spine, keep lifting that block up. Good, bend the knees, remove the block. Let's rise at the back of the mat, pick up your right foot, flexing the right hip. You can add a little resistance here. Step forward, pick up the left foot, pause, or add your resistance. Step forward, pick it up. One more, step it forward. Pick it up, maybe add resistance. And now we're just gonna step our left foot back, high lunge. Pause here, shorten the stance as much as you need. Bend the knees, we're gonna push the ground away towards straightening, but don't worry about actually straightening the leg because I don't want you to focus on the knee. We're not locking out the knee. We're activating these leg muscles, pushing into the ground. If the leg straightens a little bit, that's great. If it doesn't, that's cool too. Focus on just the feeling of pushing the foot into the ground. Pause in your lunge, let's hinge forward, shorten the space between torso and the thigh without changing anything. Weight shifts forward to the center of the foot, stay here or float the left toes. Bend knee airplane. You can add a tap or go right to that single leg balance, left leg up. Step left foot back, turn left, little heel toward butt. So knees are gonna stay pretty soft. It's just a little step, like you're trying to kick your heel to your butt. This is flexion of the knee. So when the knee bends, that's hip flexion, and the hamstring flexes the knee. Turn to the front of the mat. We're heading to quadruped. Grab that block and place it either the medium or the thinnest way between the thighs. Let's come to a hover here. Get that deep core supporting. Hover the knees, really feel that block lift up toward the pelvis. Keep that lift up as you lift into down dog. Feel that block lift up toward the sit bones. Exhale, hover the knees back to quadruped. You can lower all the way down or keep that hover. Exhale, lift back to down dog. Hands walk back toward the feet. Happy squat, big bend in the knees. Let's make sure we're not rocking back onto the heels, but really evenly weighting the foot. And again, we think about pushing the feet into the ground as we hug the block. We're not worrying about bending and straightening the knee. That's just an outcome of activating the hamstrings here. Good, let's remove the block and walk it forward, left foot up. Add that resistance or not. Step forward. Flex the right hip. Add resistance or don't. Two more, step it forward. Step it forward one more time. And then we're gonna start the stream. So we're gonna combine those two, get those blocks ready, and we're gonna start in a low lunge with the block under the right knee. So arms come up, inhale. Exhale, long in the backs of the legs without pulling from the sit bones. Right foot steps back, we lower right knee onto the block. Lift up, you can stay exactly like we did last time, hands at triple S. If you feel like you've got your alignment, arms come up. Exhale, hinge, slow yourself down with the back of that left leg. Push the ground away, arms come up. Try to keep all the movement out of the ribs. Hinge. Use the left hamstring to slow you down so that we don't pull, we're lengthening with control. Now this time you can stay in your hinge. This is completely optional. You can pause here, lifting the throat, or you can try a little hamstring curl here. Imagine trying to kick your right heel toward your butt and then tap down. So this is why we've got the block under the knee. This would probably not feel great if we weren't supported under that right knee. And see if you can get that right hamstring to assist in that action of getting the heel toward the butt. Now stay with the right toes down. Hover, tilted crescent. You can still keep both hands on blocks. You can be off the blocks. Warrior variation, ground that right heel. Bring the block to that left forearm. Right arm comes up and over. Feel this lift up and away from the ground. So we're not sinking. We're not trying to lower the pelvis really low to the ground. We're feeling this lift up. Back stroke the right arm. Okay, turn to the back of the mat. Take your block with you. Left modified side plank. You can take a very regular left modified side plank. You could try to put the block behind the right knee here, just like we did in our quadruped glute pulses. Feel this left thigh bone lift up. Hands are gonna come to the front ribs, holding them in place. You can be very still in your modified side plank. You can just try to hold the block, isometric hold of the hamstring. You can do these little pulses here, just in a different way than we did in our quadruped. Good, remove the block. Let's step that right foot forward toward the back of the mat. Lift and continue turning to the left. We're facing the side of the mat for those butt kicks. Soften the knees. Imagine that broom behind you. So we don't want to be kicking and arching the back. We really want to hold pelvis steady so that we can use the hamstrings for this. Turn to the front of the mat. You can always have your blocks with you. We'll come to a bent knee airplane. So low that left foot, weight is right in the center of the foot. Knee stays bent, torso toward that left thigh. We're working that left hamstring here as it gets length. Now you can add a tap. Let's keep this left knee bent. We're gonna rise up and flex the right hip. It's a little bit harder keeping that knee bent, and then extend it back. Bent knee airplane. Hands can be on blocks, or you can hover. Standing leg stays bent as we lift up, flex the hips. So we're really working this left hip glute hamstring. Extend it back. Keep the knee bent. Step the feet together and let's switch. Left foot steps back, left knee comes to the block, 90-90 lunge. Zipper up, left foot firm, that's important. Maybe hands stay at triple S, or we add these airplane arms as we hinge. Push the ground away. We work that right hamstring, and then we're working it as we lengthen it. It's stretching, but we're slowing down on the way forward. Push the ground away. Give that left glute a little squeeze to help out. Hinge with that feeling of the broom behind your back. So it shouldn't feel like a pulling type of stretch on the hamstring here. You might feel it working, it might feel like a little bit of a stretch, but if you're feeling a pull near the pelvis and we're going too far, let's hold our next hinge. Add that optional hamstring curl. You can hamstring curl and hold, isometric. You can tap up and down. It's important that we keep that zippered up with the pubic bone. Left glute is helping out, so give that left glute a little squeeze. Lift off that left knee. Maybe hands come to a block for that, or blocks for that tilted crescent. Ground the left heel. Block comes to that right thigh between the forearm and the thigh. Warrior variation. So we're pushing the ground away to feel this lift up instead of sinking down. Backstroke the left arm. Take your block with you. We're turning to the back of the mat. Right modified side plank. Stay with our regular modified plank or bring the block between the left hamstring and the calf. Behind the knee, you can stay, same thing. Hand to the ribs, isometric hold. Or tiny little pulses. Keep the pelvis still. So think about those sit bones where the hamstrings attach. We don't want the sit bones wiggling around right now. Remove that block. Take your left foot step forward toward the back of the mat. Keep turning. So we're facing the side of the mat. Little hamstring curl here. Zipper that pubic bone up. Keep the ribs in. Turn to the front of the mat. Hands can come to blocks or you can hover. Bent knee airplane. So we're really bending this right knee. Our weight is centered in that right foot. Right knee will stay bent. You can tap down and then rise up. Flex the hip, but keep the right knee bent. And then transition back into that bent knee airplane or standing split, either one. Keeping that feeling of the broom behind you. So our pelvis is not moving. Our pelvis is not giving us the stretch. The stretch is coming from hinging at the hips, feeling that length in the muscle. Step down into a quadruped. You can cat-cow. You could take a down dog if that feels good for the hamstrings, but let's keep this feeling of upward lift, pressing the fingers into the ground if you're in down dog. Let's come onto our backs. You can take a quick stretch if that feels good for you, maybe a figure four or a happy baby. You can hug the knees in and rock side to side. Well, let's hug this right thigh in. We're gonna bring hands either behind that right thigh or wherever you can grab, finding that connection of belly to thigh with that triple S. And from here, without changing that, you're gonna extend the leg as straight as it will go. Don't think about straightening the knee, think about keeping the thigh toward the torso and just extending from there. You can add a couple flexes and points of the foot to maybe deepen some of that sensation in the hamstrings. And then lower it down. Pick up the left foot. So this is left hip flexion. Grab wherever you can. Keep the hip flexed. We're trying to keep belly to thigh. Straighten from there without changing that connection. So it's not about the knee. It's about behind the leg. You can add a little flex and point. And release it down. Come to your Shavasana, whatever that looks like. You can have the feet on the mat still. You could extend the legs out. Hands can be on your ribs or at your sides. Close the eyes as you relax the forehead. Wiggle the jaw around a little bit. Feel that expansive inhale. And that full exhale helping to release any tension left over in the mind or body.